Revenge office stories. My replacement, a woman 10 years younger than me, called me outdated on her first day. She took my job, my office, and the credit for my 20 years of work. And she smiled while she did it, a bright, predatory flash of teeth that promised a new, modern era for the company. An era that had no place for me. She thought I'd fight back, get petty, or try to sabotage her. Instead, I gave her just enough rope to hang herself in front of the entire board of directors. Have you ever had that feeling where your stomach just drops, knowing someone is about to tear down everything you've built? That sickening lurch of injustice when loyalty gets repaid with a dismissal? That's exactly where this story begins. My name is Sarah, and I'm 45. For 2 decades, I was the institutional memory, the secret weapon, the undisputed backbone of a company called Innovate Solutions. I wasn't just an employee, I was part of the foundation. This is the story of how I stepped back and let them crack that very foundation, just to prove I was the only one who knew how to set it right. It's a story about the high price of experience and the even higher cost of dismissing it. This isn't just a revenge story, it's a masterclass in boardroom justice. If you believe competence always wins in the end and you want to hear more stories where the overlooked finally get their due, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming. For 20 years, my professional life was built inside the 4 walls of Innovate Solutions. I started when the company was just a handful of ambitious people in a cramped office, fueled by bad coffee and big ideas. I wasn't just along for the ride. I was one of the people drawing the maps. My title changed over the years, but my real job was always the same: Director of Client Strategy and Solutions. Put simply, if a client was important, they were my client. If a problem was a nightmare, it was my problem. I wasn't just managing accounts. I was building relationships that had weathered recessions, market shifts, and 3 different CEOs. I knew the names of my clients' kids, their favorite teams, and the ridiculous, illogical but critical ways they liked their quarterly reports formatted. This wasn't just data in a CRM. It was a human network of trust I'd woven together, thread by thread, for 2 decades. My biggest contribution, the one I was proudest of, was a proprietary client management system I designed from the ground up. I called it the Sentinel System. It wasn't flashy, but it was brilliant. I had spent years with our developers building a platform that perfectly mirrored our unique business processes. It tracked every interaction, every promise, every custom requirement. It flagged problems before they became emergencies and automated half of our reporting, saving hundreds of hours each quarter. It was the company's central nervous system, and I was its architect. The system was so vital that our biggest client, the Henderson Group, once called it their lifeline to us. My boss, David, the VP of Operations, had been with the company for 15 years. He was a good guy, but a creature of comfort. He relied on me completely. Just let Sarah handle it, was his mantra. It was both a compliment and, as I'd soon find out, a crutch. He trusted me, but that trust had curdled into assumption. He just assumed I'd always be there, the ever-reliable Sarah, quietly holding everything together while others took the spotlight. The office was stable, professional, and built on a foundation of respect I'd helped create. Newer employees knew my door was always open. I wasn't their manager by title, but I was their mentor in practice. I believed that lifting others up made everyone stronger. I had poured my soul into Innovate Solutions, and in return it had given me a purpose. I felt secure. I felt valued. It was a comfortable, dangerous illusion, the kind that shatters so completely you wonder how you ever believed it in the first place. The harbinger of my professional doom arrived on a Tuesday. Her name was Chloe. She was in her early 30s, armed with a fancy MBA and a resume littered with trendy tech startups that burned bright and then burned out. She walked into the office, not with the quiet observation of a newcomer, but with the confident stride of a conqueror. She'd been hired for a new role, head of strategic modernization, a title so vague it could mean anything or nothing. David introduced us, beaming. Sarah, this is Chloe. She's here to shake things up, bring a fresh perspective. I want you two to work closely. I smiled and extended my hand. Welcome to the team, Chloe. I'm happy to show you the ropes, starting with our key accounts and the systems we use. Chloe's handshake was firm, her eyes scanning me with a quick, dismissive appraisal. Thanks, she said, her tone clipped. I've already looked at your workflows online. A bit traditional, don't you think? A week later, she shadowed me on a call with the Henderson Group. It was a routine check-in, more about the relationship than a deal. I spent the first few minutes asking our contact, Mark, about his recent trip to Italy. I let him talk, guiding the conversation gently back to business. After the call, Chloe cornered me. I don't get your approach, she said, not as a question, but an accusation. You spent 10 minutes talking about his holiday. We should have been upselling him on the new analytics package. It was inefficient. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Mark Henderson doesn't get upsold, Chloe. He gets consulted. We've had that account for 15 years because we're partners, not vendors. That 10-minute conversation reaffirmed a decade of trust. She laughed, a short, sharp, disbelieving sound. That's such an outdated way of thinking, she said, loud enough for the junior staff nearby to hear. It's all about metrics and scalable solutions now, not small talk. The word just hung there. Outdated. It was a single word, but it was a weapon. It was a direct shot at my 2 decades of experience, framing it as a liability, not an asset. That was the first time I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The earthquake hit 2 weeks later. David called me into his office. Chloe was already there, sitting in the chair I usually sat in, a smug, knowing look on her face. My stomach clenched. Sarah, David began, avoiding my eyes. We're making some exciting changes. As you know, Chloe's been tasked with modernizing our strategy. In light of that, we're restructuring the department. He slid a paper across the desk. It was a new org chart. My name, once at the top, was now in a floating box off to the side. Senior Advisor. Chloe's name was in my old spot with a new upgraded title. Director of Client Strategy and Innovation. You're giving her my job, I asked, my voice dangerously calm, looking straight at David. It's not like that, he stammered. Your role is evolving. You'll be a resource for the whole team. You can mentor, advise. Chloe will handle the day-to-day and a more forward-facing role with clients. He was giving my job, my relationships, my system, my entire professional life to a woman who'd been here a month and called me outdated. The betrayal was so deep it left me breathless. A white-hot rage built in my chest, and I had the urge to scream, to list every single one of my achievements, to demand he justify how 20 years of loyalty could be erased in a 5-minute meeting. But then I saw Chloe's face. She was waiting for the explosion. She wanted me to become the hysterical, emotional older woman who couldn't handle change. She wanted to prove her point. In that instant, I made a choice. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. I took a slow, deliberate breath, pushed the rage down, and found an icy calm. I picked up the org chart, folded it neatly, and looked at David. I see, I said, my voice perfectly even. I trust you've considered all the implications of this. When do you need me out of my office? The fight drained from David's eyes, replaced by surprise and maybe a hint of shame. Chloe just smiled. She thought she'd won. She had no idea I had just changed the rules of the game. My new role as senior advisor was exactly as meaningless as it sounded. I was moved to a smaller office, away from the action. My job was to be available, a golden cage designed to sideline me until I got the hint and quit. They seriously underestimated my patience. Instead of fighting for scraps of my old job, I embraced my new one. I decided to follow the job description to the letter. I would advise, but only when asked. My revenge wasn't going to be sabotage. It was going to be an act of strategic inaction. My expertise was my most powerful weapon, and I was about to show them its value by simply taking it away. The first domino to fall was the Sentinel system. On her first day as director, Chloe announced her grand vision. "The current system is clunky and built on legacy code," she declared. "It's holding us back. We're moving to a modern, cloud-based solution. I've already picked a vendor, Synergy Cloud. It's what they use in Silicon Valley." A junior analyst I'd mentored raised his hand. "But the Sentinel system has custom integrations with our top clients' inventory, and all our historical data is formatted for its reporting engine. Migrating will be a nightmare." Chloe just waved him off. "We'll export the data. The new system is more powerful. It'll handle it. We need to be agile, not shackled to the past." I wasn't invited to that meeting. I heard about it later and just nodded. The next week, the migration began. It was a complete catastrophe. Just as the analysts predicted, the export was a mess of corrupted files and mismatched data. 20 years of client history turned into digital gibberish. The custom links that allowed the Henderson Group's system to talk to ours were broken. Reports that used to take an hour now took 2 days of manual work, and they were full of errors. The team was panicking. David, my old boss, started looking perpetually stressed. He stopped by my office, his face pale. "Sarah, the team is really struggling with this Synergy Cloud rollout. Any chance you could, take a look? See if you can fix the data mapping?" I swiveled in my chair and gave him a polite, serene smile. "I'd love to help, David, but my expertise is in the Sentinel systems architecture. I'm not familiar with Synergy Cloud at all. I'm sure Chloe has a handle on it." She seemed very confident. "I was just doing my job. I was an advisor, and my advice, had anyone asked, would have been not to do this. They didn't ask. So I watched the fire spread and documented everything. Every panicked email, every bug report, every delayed client statement. The next pillar to crumble was the Henderson account. With the system in shambles, Chloe tried to manage the relationship with sheer force of will. She scheduled weekly Synergy calls with Mark Henderson, calls he never asked for and clearly didn't have time for. She bombarded him with corporate jargon and aggressive pitches, completely misreading the quiet, respectful partnership he valued. One afternoon, I overheard her on a call, her voice high-pitched and defensive. "Mark, I understand there was a small discrepancy in the invoice, but I assure you our new, more robust system is—" "No, I don't think it's necessary to loop in Sarah. As the new director, I am your primary point of contact." A few minutes later, an email from Mark Henderson landed in my inbox. The subject, a quick question. It read, "Hi Sarah, hope you're well. Things seem a bit chaotic over there. We received an invoice that was off by a significant margin, and I'm not getting a clear answer. The report you used to send on the 1st of the month, the one that reconciled our inventory, hasn't arrived. This new person, Chloe, keeps sending invites for touch-base meetings. To be frank, it's getting disruptive. Is everything okay?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The old Sarah would have immediately picked up the phone, soothed Mark's concerns, and stayed all night to fix the invoice. The new Sarah had a different mandate. I typed my reply. "Hi Mark, great to hear from you. Sorry to hear about the invoicing issue. As you may know, my role here has changed. I'm in an advisory position now. Chloe is the director for your account and the best person to resolve these operational matters. I've forwarded your email to her and my boss, David, to make sure they can address your concerns. All the best, Sarah." I CC'd David and Chloe. It was professional. It was polite. It was also a perfectly aimed torpedo. I didn't tattle. I just redirected the problem to its rightful owner with a key witness watching. I saved both emails in a folder on my desktop labeled documentation. The final act was the annual strategic forecast for the board. This had been my signature project for 15 years, and my forecasts were legendary for their accuracy. Chloe, of course, decided she would build a new one from scratch, using the data from her beloved Synergy Cloud system. Data I knew for a fact was corrupt. She spent weeks on a slick presentation full of hockey stick growth charts and bold promises. A few days before the board meeting, David, looking more haunted than ever, came to my office. "Sarah, please," he whispered, closing the door. "Just look at this. Does this look right? She's projecting 40% growth in the Henderson account." I scanned the document. The numbers were a fantasy, based on services Mark Henderson had already rejected and inflated by data errors. It was a house of cards on a foundation of sand. "It's an ambitious projection," I said carefully. "Ambitious? It's impossible." David hissed. "The CFO will tear us to shreds. Can you fix it? You still have your old models, right?" I looked him straight in the eye. "My old models run on data from the Sentinel system, which, as you know, is gone. And my feedback has previously been dismissed as outdated. As senior advisor, I can advise. And my advice is that these numbers don't seem consistent with historical performance. It would be wise to double-check the source data." I handed the summary back to him. I was giving him the answer, telling him exactly where the bomb was hidden. But I wasn't going to defuse it for him. That was the new director's job. He took the paper, his hand trembling, and walked out. The stage was set. All that was left was for the curtain to rise. The main boardroom was on the top floor, a sterile, intimidating space with a 20-foot mahogany table designed to make you feel small. On one side sat the C-suite, the sharp, no-nonsense CEO, Robert, the eagle-eyed CFO, Maria, who could spot a rounding error from 100 paces, and David, who looked like he was about to face a firing squad. On the other side sat the board of directors, stern-faced investors who cared about one thing, the bottom line. I was there, too, seated in a chair against the wall, a few feet behind the main action. As senior advisor, my presence was required, but my participation was not. I was a ghost at the feast. Chloe stood at the head of the table, radiating a confidence that was either genuine delusion or spectacular bravery. She clicked her slide deck and her presentation, "The future is now, a new paradigm for growth," filled the screen. She started strong, walking the board through her vision of a more agile, data-driven company. Then she got to the numbers. "And as you can see," she announced, pointing to a graph that shot up like a rocket, "our new strategies are projected to yield a 35% increase in revenue year over year, spearheaded by a 40% growth in our key enterprise accounts." A heavy silence fell. It was Maria, the CFO, who spoke first. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. "Ms. Vance," she said, looking at the numbers, not at Chloe, "that's an extraordinary claim. Your projection for the Henderson account alone is nearly double their annual spend. What data are you basing this on?" Chloe didn't flinch. "On our new, enhanced analytics from the Synergy Cloud platform. It allows for more accurate, predictive modeling." Maria put on her glasses. "That's interesting, because I ran my own numbers this morning from our financials. Our build work with the Henderson Group has decreased by 15% this quarter. Furthermore, their account is flagged for 3 late payments, something that's never happened. Your projection isn't just optimistic. It's disconnected from reality. So, I'll ask again, where did your data come from?" Chloe's smile finally cracked. "The system, there might be some data lags." She stammered. The CEO, Robert, stepped in. His voice was low and dangerous. "Lags? We got a formal notice from Mark Henderson this morning. He's invoking the 90-day review clause in his contract. He cited a significant degradation in service, operational chaos, and a breakdown in communication. He says he's considering taking his 8-figure-a-year business elsewhere." The blood drained from Chloe's face. David sank so low in his chair, I thought he might disappear. Robert's gaze then swept across the room until it landed on me. The entire room turned to look at the outdated relic against the wall. "Sarah," he said, his tone not an accusation but a plea, "you managed this account for 15 years. You built the system everyone used to rely on. Can you shed some light on this?" This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. I just leaned forward and spoke with the calm authority of someone who knows exactly what they're talking about. Robert, Maria, members of the board, I began. The Henderson account has always been a partnership built on stability and trust. Their satisfaction was directly tied to the reliability of our operations, which were managed through the Sentinel system. I paused, letting the name hang in the air. That system was designed to mirror our exact business logic, ensuring things like invoicing were flawless. When we decommissioned it, we didn't just lose software. We lost 2 decades of institutional knowledge. The data discrepancies Maria noted are a direct result of a flawed migration from a custom environment to a generic one. The client's frustration is a direct result of that operational failure. I never said Chloe's name. I didn't have to. I just laid out the facts, cause and effect, with cold precision. I wasn't placing blame. I was delivering a diagnosis, a postmortem on the disaster she created. When I finished, the silence was absolute. Chloe stood frozen, her face a mask of pure humiliation. The board wasn't looking at her anymore. They were all looking at me. In that moment, they didn't see someone outdated. They saw the expert they had cast aside. They saw the value they couldn't recognize until it was gone. And they saw with terrifying clarity the massive, costly mistake they had made. The CEO dismissed Chloe with a curt, "That will be all, Ms. Vance." She practically ran from the room, leaving her laptop and the smoking ruins of her career behind. The meeting quickly turned into a crisis management session, with me calmly providing the data and context they desperately needed. An hour later, as things wrapped up, David approached me. His face was ashen. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am so sorry. We made a terrible mistake. A catastrophic mistake." I just looked at him, my expression neutral. "We need you, Sarah," he pleaded. "We need you to fix this. Call Mark. Fix the system. Name your price. We need you to come back." I let his words hang in the silence of the empty boardroom. "Come back?" I asked softly. "David, I never left. I've been right here in my little advisory office, just like you asked." I let that sink in for a beat. "You're right. You have a catastrophic problem. The Henderson account is bleeding out, your client data is a mess, and team morale is shot. It will take at least 6 months of intensive work just to start repairing the damage." Hope flickered in his eyes. "So you'll do it?" I gave him a small, sad smile. "It's an interesting offer, and I appreciate you finally recognizing my value. It's just the timing is a little awkward." I reached into my bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the polished table to him. He picked it up. His eyes went wide. The card was from the Henderson Group's main competitor, one of the biggest firms in our industry. My name was on it, and below my name was my new title, Vice President of Global Client Strategy. "I accepted the position last week," I said calmly. "Mark Henderson himself called me 3 weeks ago. He said if Innovate Solutions no longer valued my expertise, perhaps his top competitor would. Turns out they value it quite a lot. My start date is Monday." I stood up and smoothed down my jacket. For the first time in months, I felt light. The weight of 20 years of misplaced loyalty was finally gone. I hadn't needed sabotage or screaming matches. My success was my revenge. I let them fail, and in doing so, created an opportunity for myself that was better than anything they could have offered me to clean up their own mess. In the end, she didn't just take my job and call me outdated. She gave me the push I needed to see my own worth more clearly than ever. True value isn't about being the newest or loudest person in the room. It's about quiet competence, undeniable expertise, and the wisdom to know when to fight, and when to simply step aside and let the incompetent hang themselves with the rope they so proudly bought. They wanted a modern, agile future. Now, they have to build it from the ruins, without the one person who knew how to draw the blueprint. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have taken the offer to go back, or was walking away the ultimate power move? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about professional vindication, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more.